Today's podcast is sponsored by Atomic Golf. If you need custom ball markers, divot repair tools, and more that are made from high-quality materials like solid copper and brass and look really good, then you should check out our friends at Atomic Golf. If courses like Old Barnwell, Landman, Sweetens Cove, and more are already working with them, then you should too. Visit atomicgolf.club and follow them on Instagram at Atomic Golf.
I remember one time in particular where I am on the 17th green and we're walking out and all of a sudden I'm finding out that the 18th hole is for like $3,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck just happened here?
I've seen some expensive ones too. I mean, I think I caddied in a group and 16. We're on hole 16 and it's a par 5 and a guy hits a second shot on the green, probably like 10 feet from the pin. I was like, wow, that was a heck of a shot. It wasn't my player even. And he looks at me, he's like, I needed it. I lost $25,000 last hole.
Hello and welcome once again to the Caddie Tales Podcast. I'm Mark the Caddy, joined by my sidekick and fellow caddy, Nick, and we are delighted to again be talking with you about this beautiful game of golf and how it mirrors life, how life mirrors golf, and there's so many lessons that intersect. We can learn and apply in both places. So, how are you today, Nick?
Doing well, buddy. Pretty excited for tomorrow. We got a nice little tee time set up. We're gonna play a little golf.
Yeah. I did not have play golf in February in Wisconsin on my bingo card.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Not living.
Yeah, no, it's going to be awesome. I mean, what a mild winter we have had. And, but you know what? One thing that I was telling someone is the older I get, the less I enjoy winter. And I'm not enjoying this winter, even though it's like the most mild one on record.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I got to start that thought of where I'm going to go once my kids are all out of school.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you noticed something. I am representing both Marquette University and Butler University today. I have a student at each place. Yeah, basketball schools.
Yeah.
But just like when we caddy double bag for people, can't play favorites, even though, we might jive better with one than the other. You can't play favorites. Got to love them both the same. So I'm trying to do that with my daughters. Lead by example today.
All right. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, right. So anyway, speaking of playing golf tomorrow, Nick, this is about the time that one of my goals, and I've told you this, is I want us, me, you, some other caddies that we get along with well, to start planning a winter golf trip each year. I think that just needs to happen, don't you?
Yeah. Sounds fun. I mean, I do golf trips around here all the time, but yeah, it'd be nice to get away for the winter.
Yeah. Where would you want to go?
I mean, Scottsdale's got a lot of great golf. I think we're kind of talking about maybe South Carolina, which is
I
phenomenal.
just think the people from the Carolinas just really represent themselves well on golf Twitter. So I find myself, even though I've never been there, wanting to go there. So so this is about the time that a lot of people from where we live, Michigan, Ohio, other places in the Midwest or the North, are heading down south or out west somewhere to play some golf. And then there's also people who are sitting in their homes today, and it's starting to feel closer and closer perhaps to their golf trip that they've been planning for a year for somewhere this summer, particularly to a place like where we work, and they're starting to get excited about it. And today, what we're going to talk about is a few tips to help make somebody's golf trip a little bit better. Some things that we've picked up on that if people pay attention to these things, especially people who've never really gone on a trip before, but this is some stuff that even people who are regulars might be able to apply a little bit better. They're going to have a great trip, or a better trip, perhaps. So yeah, what do you think, Nick? Have you ever gone on a golf trip where you're like, oh, I wish I would have known that in advance?
Yeah. I mean, it's always nice to kind of scout out the place beforehand, find out, the nice restaurants and stuff like that. Maybe a couple places at the place you're staying at, the resort you're staying at, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, find out what the nightlife's like beforehand.
Yeah, that's more for a young whippersnapper like yourself than a married man like me. So
Yeah.
those days have passed in my
Yeah.
life. I like to actually. I was so excited. We went on a little golf trip. I'll talk a little out of class here, but we went on a golf trip, and one of our buddies had a few too many,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the sober walker that night, and he needed to get back to the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being super excited because that became my built-in excuse to be able to go back and go to bed early, so that I didn't look like this big pansy. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
I
was
should try
like
to be that guy
exhausted,
more.
and I'm like, how am I going to hang with these guys till 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and then play golf
Yeah.
tomorrow? And then I got to be the good Samaritan, help a fella out, get him to bed, and then hit the hay myself. So, anyways. Yeah, you want to be able to plan in advance, have a great trip. And there are some things that I, in particular, have really noticed that really make a difference. And so we're not going to be talking so much about, well, book your trip this way or that way. I mean, you can work with customer service people at whatever resort you're going to and book the best room or whatever. But more so just a general theme. And one of them is something that I think people would agree with if they've been on a trip to a resort like ours. And that is play your most desired course first.
Yeah.
So let's say you got a golf trip, 3 days, whatever. You're going to play 4 courses, 5, 6, whatever. A lot of people live by the mantra of saving the best for last.
Yeah, last. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes sense. But what have you seen when people have done that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, outside factors can get involved. If you save it for the end, you're probably gonna be a little tired, maybe a little hungover if you're drinking and partaking and that kind of thing. And you might be kind of sick of golf after like
Yeah.
4 or 5 days. So
Yeah,
I don't
people
know.
can never imagine it. I threw up a tweet earlier this year, and I didn't expect it to get this kind of traction, but it was one of my more viewed or popular ones. And it was like it was some meme or whatever video of people just acting super excited, shooting beer cans off or whatever. And
Yeah.
I kind of captioned it with college buddies on the first day of a 4-day golf trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think there is no bigger difference in our life as caddies for groups than when we caddy for a group on their first day of a golf trip
Yeah.
versus when we catch them on their last day of a golf trip, especially if it's a travel day.
Yeah.
It couldn't be less fun on that last
Yeah.
day, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I mean, and you're probably thinking about getting back to your life, and like it's like any vacation. Like the last day is kind of like a downer because you got to go home and get back
Yeah.
to all the work you missed and everything. So yeah, it's absolutely it's crucial.
Yeah, and I think all those things you mentioned, a lot of times people have been drinking a lot. They're certainly not sleeping as well as they do at home in most
Yeah.
cases. Maybe they've had a frustrating week. Sometimes, when groups are playing matches or whatever, a team's out of it or whatever. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, conventional wisdom says, yeah, save the best for last. Let's have a build up. Let's just
Yeah.
have this upward trajectory. But in my experience, it just doesn't work that way. And so, a lot of times when you go to a major destination resort or course, there are, they're all good courses. It's not like you're going to places and playing somewhere objectively bad.
Yeah.
But there's usually kind of the course at the center of things,
Yeah.
And like Pinehurst number 2.
Mhm.
If I was going to Pinehurst, I'd try my darndest to play that one first, especially
Yeah.
after I've heard so many golfers tell me how difficult it is, and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, do that, folks. Play your most desired course first. Sometimes it's out of your control. Maybe you can't schedule it that way. Maybe things are booked or whatever. But
Mhm.
get away from that thinking that it's going to be better if you save the best for last. Now, I mentioned something, and this gets us to our next point that I wanted to discuss. You know, if guys are playing a match and maybe some guys have already clinched it or you're out of it or whatever, I would say in general, think twice about playing a match at all. Now, I can feel people booing me from the Twitter sphere when I say that.
Yeah, and, I might be one of them, actually. I think I might disagree a little bit on that one.
Yeah. But you know, I let's disagree, Nick. Let's have our first fight. No,
all right.
I put a caveat on this. I'm not talking about your Saturday match with your buddies. I'm not talking a course that you play all the time. I'm not talking any of that stuff. But specifically, the reason why I mention this is if you are a person who struggles with losing and it's going to affect your mood or personality, maybe the destination golf trip that you planned for a year and spent $1,000 or more on is not the place to have added aggravation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. That's my point is I have seen people who, like, this has been what they've been dreaming of all year, and then they come out and they're just getting hammered in their best ball match or whatever. Yeah. And it has such a stain on the day. And I'm like, I get that if it's just your normal Saturday match you play with guys back home. But here, it's a different experience is what I'm really getting at. And I would say let it be a different experience.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm like the type of golfer that likes to have a match every time he plays. It keeps me into it mentally more so. Yeah. So I guess that's
you're
just how
kind of a guy who, you know, you're used to living, you know, bare bones and not having any money in your pocket. So what does it matter if you lose a few dollars?
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
What I really meant, listeners, is Nick's a pretty laid back guy, and he's not gonna
I'm not gonna take it with me
and ruin other people's days. I've seen guys almost come to blows.
No doubt.
And you know, then all of a sudden these guys become rules officials on like hole 17 or 18. They've been giving putts or whatever the whole day. Yeah. And then all of a sudden on 17 it becomes this ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
And
God forbid you lose a ball or something like that. And it's like,
well, then it becomes our fault that they're losing this money. And I mean, most of the matches are, you know, low money, but I've been on and I can't always follow what they're playing up. Everybody has their little games, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been on there before. And I remember one time in particular where I am on the 17th green and we're walking out, and all of a sudden I'm finding out that the 18th hole is for like $3,000. Yeah. And I'm like, what the heck just happened here?
I've seen some expensive ones too. I mean, I think I caddied in a group and 16. We're on hole 16 and it's a par 5, and a guy hits a second shot on the green, probably like 10 feet from the pin. I was like, wow, that's a heck of a shot. It wasn't my player even. And he looks at me, he's like, I needed it. I lost $25,000 last hole. I was like,
yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. And so the conventional wisdom would say, well, these guys, if they can bet that kind of money, they can afford to lose it. I hope at least.
Hopefully, yeah.
But it's more of a pride thing, and so you know, you don't want to have people fighting and getting all mad at each other. And so I get it. This is one that people might disagree with me on, or many probably do. So maybe think of it as, if you're going to play a match for the amount of money that you are content losing.
Low stakes.
My most recent golf trip that I was on, I had to pay $140 into the pot or whatever, and I considered it a donation in my head and in my heart. I'm like, this is just what the golf trip cost me. This is the price of doing business. I had zero intentions of winning $1 of that back. And so it was a little easier on me when I, in fact, did not win $1 of it back.
Yeah, thank you for your donation, by the way. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So anyways, speaking of that, let's move on to the next point. Budget appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of a lot of things for people, but specifically this is one where I do want to talk about the caddies and the role of tipping the caddies if you have caddies. We're not going to talk specifics about tipping. It's different in every place. It can be crass. It always inevitably leads to somebody asking me what the biggest tip I've ever gotten is and all that kind of stuff. That's not what we're getting into here. What I will say, Nick, have you ever seen, for instance, a guy, you've just spent 5 hours with him, you've busted your tail, and you get to the end of the round, and A, he has no cash.
Yeah.
And B, he just asks you, so what does this cost? Or, what do you get paid?
Yeah.
Ever happened to you?
I've had that happen. Yeah. I mean, common questions usually like, do you have Venmo or something like that? And yeah. I mean, it happens a lot, stuff gets expensive, especially if you're going out every night and, that doesn't always factor into the budget. Yeah, that's like the worst feeling as a caddy, getting somebody on their last day of the trip too. And in the back of your head, you're like, oh man, this guy's probably spent all of his money. I'm screwed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, especially if they're not with a caddy that they've had previously. That also tells a story in a lot of cases. But I think the bigger issue for me is just like be thoughtful about it in a way that I'm not saying break the bank. I'm not saying just empty your wallets to us or drain your bank account. What I'm saying is be thoughtful. Like maybe have 3 numbers in mind. Hey, this is if the caddy's not good kind of amount. This is the, hey, he's good, but it wasn't the most memorable day I've ever had. And then hey, he went above and beyond and we really gelled and he made my experience a lot better amount. Like be thoughtful about it. Because sometimes even, like I've seen it where you're caddying with a guy and he's like done a terrible job and his player hates him. And you have a guy who is ready to like adopt you into his family and you both get, the same thing. It just doesn't feel very thoughtful. And maybe you want to show a different value for things. What is something that happens, Nick? Maybe you can let the listeners know. Have you ever seen, like, say you come across a young high school kid or whatever, maybe a girl in particular, at the end of the 18th hole who's standing there cleaning clubs, and she's maybe cute. Have you ever seen what she gets tipped in relation to you who has just spent 5 hours or more with these people?
Yeah, a lot of times it'll be pretty close to it just for one getting caught with clubs. And I always think I'm like, I've cleaned your clubs all day. They're clean. She's not cleaning any dirt off of them. I know for a fact there's no dirt on there.
That we're putting on right here.
Yeah. I know for a fact those clubs are clean, so I don't even know what she's doing.
Yeah, and so the issue isn't money. Like it's not like a lot of these players don't have whatever they want, to give you. It's just there hasn't been a lot of thought into it. And then, the other issue is that there are those times when a guy just drinks on the course are expensive and they're getting doubles the whole round and buying rounds for their buddies. Maybe there's a cute beverage cart girl. Yeah.
Been there.
I have seen, I don't know if I told this story before. I'm going to assume I haven't because it's worth being told. I was out with a group and it was a year, I think it was COVID year, maybe not. But it was a year where it was extremely busy. No, it was the year after. And so extremely busy on the course. And seeing the beverage cart come around was not always happening as often as players would like. Okay. Yeah. And you'd occasionally even get some complaints from guys. Or I would start telling players, hey, now load up, throw some in the back of the cart or whatever and load up because we don't know when we're going to see them again. Well, this day I'm with this guy and he's got a group out that he's hosting and he's just getting waters. And then I'd see him pull out like a $50 bill for the beverage cart person. I think we saw that beverage cart attendant that day like 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
It was,
That's a good way to do it. Yeah.
And I remember texting my wife and saying, we're either going to find out, either I'm going to get a monster tip, or we're going to find out that it really pays to be a young, attractive woman compared to a big old chubby caddy. And yeah. And so anyway, super nice guy. I'm sure it was fine and whatever. So, but like sometimes it doesn't work out that quite well for you. That like there's guys who are, they just run out, and it's like, oh, I'm out. And so I don't want to be crass, and I don't want to sound greedy. Please don't listen to that way, folks out there. I'm just saying, be thoughtful, like you would be thoughtful in a lot of other places. This is how we're supporting our families, and put some thought into it, and plan and prepare, and that would be really helpful. So enough about that. This is tied into that going around to the beverage cart a bunch, maybe the being talked into a few drinks or being encouraged on a hot day. Pace yourself on a trip, eh, Nick?
Yes, that's smart. I should try that sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, and we work in an industry where people are out to have a good time. They're on vacation, they're with their buddies. So we're not talking about, not having that good time. Have some drinks with your buddies, whatever. The only reason we would bring it up and say pace yourself is just to have a better few days. Because have you ever caddied for a guy who's so hungover that he's had to not play or he's quit?
Yeah, I've seen guys that, are having like the dry heaves and stuff like that. And I've been that guy before probably, Yeah, you don't want to be like Rory McIlroy on the way to the Ryder Cup. You need a police escort to get to the first tee. You don't want to be that guy,
Yeah, right.
Think about the golf too, not necessarily just having fun all the time.
Yeah, I remember a guy whose hands were just like shaking as he's trying to grab the club on the first tee. And I thought, this is just going to be a long day. And it was. And I've been out with a kid who was out there with his dad and maybe uncle, whomever, like 2 grown-ups, 2 kids type of thing. And like younger people, like 21 to 25, whatever they were. And the guy had so much to drink the night before. He tried playing a few holes, but then he just went and laid in the car while his dad and others finished. And I thought, holy cow, man, Dad just spent all this money. This is on Dad's dime, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And you're going to like just waste it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it should be a memorable experience. Like, you don't want to be blacked out the entire time. You want to try to remember a little bit. So
yeah, there's a group that I had, and they really stand out to me because, you caddy for them one day, and we had a great time out together.
Yeah.
And they asked to go again. And I'm like, I just don't know that we can, because they were so inebriated.
Yeah.
That you're like, and then the next time that I'd caddy for them would be the day they were leaving. Kind of when I talked about like they're a different vibe that day. And I'm like, guys, I don't know that we can recreate the magic. Yeah. And they promised me that they would be raring to go, that it would still be fun. Okay, we'll give it a try. Yeah. And it's like 2 days later, and they had drank again the whole next day. And then this final day of their trip, it's like 7:30 on a Sunday morning, and they walk out double fisting it. And I'm like, I don't know how I don't know how you can do it. I really don't. Yeah. But the reason why I remember them years later is because it doesn't usually work out so well.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, been there. I always like leave the players too. Like, if I'm going to see them the next day, if they're going to request me, I'm like, All right, no, let's take it easy. Tomorrow night we've got tomorrow we've got a 7 a.m. tea time tomorrow, so let's not overdo it, tonight. Um, well, I don't know if that ever works or not, but I say it anyways. So
Yeah, right. Well, you'll see people oftentimes the first day you're with them, and they're out on the driving range just grinding, getting ready for their round, and then you're gonna have them the next day early in the morning, and it's like you're sitting there watching for the shuttle to pull up. Are they gonna be on it? Did they make it?
Yeah. Their hair's still wet. They they got to run to the clubhouse to get some balls real quick, and they're like, yeah, we'll see you on the first tee. Probably drinking hand too.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you want to hear another story about that, pick up my book, Caddie Tales, on Amazon, where I tell about the big old burly football player I caddied for who hammered 21 beers the first day I caddied for him. And we were like best buds, and I was going to like crawl into his lap, have him read me a story. I mean, it was just like, this awesome day out there. And then the next day, I seriously don't think he said 50 words to me. So if you want to hear more stories like that, go ahead and pick up Caddie Tales on Amazon. Yes. And so, just pace yourself and have a nice slow burn through that time. You'll enjoy it more. Maybe. I should preface all of this. These are things we see, Nick, by our experience, but they're highly subjective. And at the end of the day, people can go ahead and do what they want to do. And if they're going to have fun with it or whatever, we don't really care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and like some people are just out there to have fun and like, and they don't really care what their score is and whatever. And that's fine. That's fine with us. It doesn't affect us.
And there's different vibes for every kind of group that you have. You're going to see more of some of these things are going to be more of an issue if you've got like college buddies. Other ones like the playing a match, for me it tends to be like either of those college buddies are guys from the same country club or whatever. Usually not husbands and wives. You don't have to worry about that kind of thing ruining their day. So a lot of this is subjective, but do the things that you want to do and have fun, but maybe just put a little thought into what would maybe make an expensive trip a little more memorable and fun. But this last one we care about, and we'll probably always touch on this to some degree, pack appropriately. Have you ever caddied for someone who it appears as though they haven't even thought about what's in their golf bag, and they're like they shipped it across the country, and it's like,
I mean, I've had people that like throw their clothes in their golf bag. They're like put their extra clothes in their golf bag because they're shipping that. So it's like whatever it was, so I don't have to pay extra for my bag or whatever.
Yeah.
I've seen that numerous times.
Yeah, but pack appropriately. Like for instance, if the weatherman says it's going to be like there's this big sun on the forecast, you don't need to pack the rain gear. Take your chances, little things like that. And
the umbrella, leave the umbrella behind, please.
Yeah. And that makes everybody's day go a little bit better. But, I think that golf trips there was an awesome picture or TikTok or whatever that I saw yesterday that reminded me how awesome golf trips are. It was a picture of a guy sitting out at the end of his driveway at 4 a.m. And the wife was like, my husband waiting to be picked up for his annual golf trip. And he's just sitting out there feeling. Like, please get here, hurry.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to miss my ride.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. I love it.
Yeah. No, I definitely want it to be a bigger part of my life, and but I've learned some things about what can make it go a little bit better. So Nick, here's the thing. We want to take some of this now and shift over to Good Caddy, Bad Caddy, our weekly segment towards the end of the show. I saw a tweet that somebody put out, and it was a generic question. They're like, I've never had a caddy before. What's the best part? And the reason why we're going to talk about it here is in relation to going on a golf trip. For most people, that's going to be the only time that they would have a chance of having a caddy. Most golfers aren't playing at a place where there's a caddy program. It's when they go to a major resort on their once-a-year trip or whatever. And so they're going to have a caddy. And we know from experience, some of our players, this is something they very much look forward to and they're comfortable with, and they've done it tons of times. And then there's others who we meet and they're like, oh, I've never had a caddy before. So anyway, this person asked that question. They're like, what's the best part about having a caddy? And somebody's response was nothing. There's nothing good about having a caddy. And they went on this whole thing about how it's like, you're forced to talk, so it's terrible for an introvert, and they might give you information you don't care about or want or this or that or whatever,
Yeah.
So let's say you walk up to the bag drop one day and you're like, hey, sir, ma'am, nice to meet you. I'm Nick. I'm going to be your caddy today. And they're like, I really don't want to have a caddy, but, we have to because, everybody else has taken one, and, our foursome has 2 caddies, and so I don't really want one.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Maybe
I think
tough or crass, but I think we meet people like that.
Yeah, for sure. I've had it numerous times. It used to be required at our course, now it's optional. But yeah, it's not a great position to be in as a caddy. Obviously, somebody that doesn't really want you there. But as caddies, we're really good at reading people, I feel like.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to read your body language, and we'll notice right away that you're not asking many questions, or we're not going to bug you too much. We'll give you yardages, or read if you need anything, and clean your ball, clean your clubs. I mean, we're there to help you. We're not there to hinder your experience at all.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I hope people can understand that even if they don't want a caddy, we can be of some assistance.
I think you're right on. And we were talking about this the other day when we had coffee with another caddy. And it's something that I think I'm going to do this year. It's just at the first tee box, or, if everybody's together at the bag drop, to say, hey, what information or what kind of caddy do you want today? Or what do you not want? I'm here for you. And almost invite them to say, I don't want you to do anything but carry my bag. And others are going to say, hey, I really need help here. Great. But if there's somebody who just hates the idea of it, we don't want to make their day miserable. We don't want to force them upon them. And my experience is that generally throughout the round, they find out it's not as bad as they thought it was going to be. Or
same.
Yeah, you have some opportunity to connect with them. But, for some people, it's a scary thing. Or, like he said, he's just an introvert. He doesn't want to have chit-chat. That's fine. Others are very particular. And if a caddy... reading greens, to me, is kind of that thing where, like, a lot of people who love having a caddy were like, oh, it's the best, because they're going to read your putts. And so that makes me feel good that most times we're on, and most times people are seeing the value of it. But there are days where, like, it's just you're not connecting because the speed isn't getting right, or they're not hitting marks, or you're just having a bad day yourself or whatever. And there's some people who that really sours it for them because they're so honed in on scoring or whatever that if that doesn't happen, it's easy to say, oh, it was because of the caddy, Yeah. The beautiful part about caddying is if that's what they say, it's usually on the ride home and you never see each other again. So yeah, move on pretty quickly, but for the good of each other. But no, like I was thinking, how would I approach it if somebody said, I really don't want a caddy? I'd say, okay, sir, well, I'm going to carry your bag, and I'm here if you decide you need anything, but I'm not going to speak or give you any advice unless you ask for it. So just ask me if you need something, and we'll go from there. But if you don't,
I was just thinking about you going an entire round without talking. That'd be funny.
You find ways, and you whisper with the other caddy, or you joke around and whatever. But no, there's plenty of loops, Nick. Where players have a different vibe to them. There's
absolutely.
some, and that you can talk each other's ears off, and there's others where you're like very, very little. every day is different. It's part of the beauty of the job.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And every golf group is different. And every group planning a trip this summer is going to have similarities, but some unique things. So if that's you out there, if you're going to be out on a golf trip, hopefully we cross paths and hopefully we have a great time together. And you have something that just really lives up to your expectations and something that you get to talk about with your buddies or your family or whoever it is that you're with for years to come, because that's the beauty of golf. It creates those kind of moments, I think, in a really special way, in a way that a lot of times other sports aren't able to do. So until then, though, folks, we are going to remind you, as we always do, that life is a lot like golf on this side of the ground. No matter how it's going, there's always a next shot. So go ahead and take yours.